and I'm the boss. This you asking questions business. What do you think? You've got the power? I don't think so. We probably need some more people over with Ruth. Okay. All right. To record them. I'll repeat them. If there's any questions, I'll repeat them. But I'm discouraging questions. Yep. Okay. All right. Yep. We're ready to go. So it's Anna. All right. Anna. All right. So I'm just going to tell you what I'm doing. I'm asking Anna to sit on the table because I'm already starting to have a look at, yep, she's all done. So my work will be easy. And I'm going to sit in front of her because if I sit at her side, I'm making her be asymmetrical. And then I won't know what's going on, about what's her. So at least if I'm symmetrical, whatever she does now is her, not me. So that's what I'm doing. So how are you? How are things going in the program? Yeah. Yeah, yeah. Can you pretend that they're not here? Oh, no, but I don't actually feel it. Oh. Do you want me to create some pain for you? No. No. Yeah. Yeah. I'm in an opposite space where usually I'm in more pain than less pain, but now I'm in less pain than more pain. So it's like I'm actually right. Yeah. Yeah, yeah. Yeah, so your defining features changed ratios. Yeah. Yeah. So I'm kind of like, it's interesting, I'm like, yeah. Yep. I think I still feel like I lost a lot of ability to rotate, so which I yep. Yep. I feel like kind of, I mean, I feel good in that area, but it's yep. Almost like consolidating or expanding on or having more confidence. I still feel like I know it's connected with shoulder and neck too, but yep. It's not a physical thing. What, do you feel more vulnerable when you're rotating or unsure or? It's when usually the rotation. Oh, okay. Mm-hmm. Yep. Yep. So there is something about better about doing it, but I'm yep. I'm still a bit kind of wary. Yep. And particularly in those situations like Qigong and driving or other times? Yep. I've adapted how I do some things, but as a result of adapting, when yep. I'm adjusting that so I can turn. Yep. Which means I don't, but I don't twist here. And the thing is, I still need to help. I feel like I need to incorporate more twisting so I'm comfortable doing it. Because I lose that ability here if I just compensate other places. Yep. Okay. Yep. So I'm going to ask you to walk. Just because I tell you why I'm asking what, because I want to see, she's demonstrated that she can differentiate, she can twist and not use heel, or she can turn and not get the rotation in her spine, so she can do that. And they're both great. So I'm just going to see, without her knowing necessarily that's what I'm looking at, see what happens when she's walking. But now she knows that's what I'm going to do. So this is why we don't talk in FI, because it changes things.
Yeah, see? Yep. So she's already got off on the thinking about rotating and walking. Yeah. I'll get my noise cancelling headphones and put. So I wouldn't say that rotation's a big feature of her walking. I mean, her arms swing, but it's more her arms swinging. So she can. I mean, it's not like she can't. It's not, but it's not. If Ruth was saying about she's got a framework of planes. That's often how I think too. Is what's her favourite plane? Yep, and a little bit that way actually, because of that, because of the Marilyn Monroe thing happening. Yeah, well, it's a little bit. The weight shift left and right is very. You don't know what Marilyn Monroe does? Like she did it. The bum wiggle. Yeah. Yep. Look, and the thing is with Anna, she can do all of it. Like none of it is actually a big glaring problem. So what I'm saying, whatever I'm saying is, a level of distinction that is not in your average Joe Blow thing. So you just have to take that. Okay. Yep.
And it's more like something about like a confidence or using it, say more that so much, but yeah, that it's
Yeah. So this is the aside to you guys, is what I'm hearing, and maybe I slightly led into this, but because of this, I'm getting the sense that there's a feeling of wanting to be connected and powerful here, or surer. And sometimes the being surer is actually more about power. And like the trunk doesn't have to be powerful. The trunk has to be able to transmit power. So you have to be able to generate power from the pelvis and transmit it through the trunk into powerful rotations. And we need rotations because that's actually how transmitting power through rotation is very powerful, as opposed to that. Like there's that wind up thing, and it's the rotation that gives us power and shock absorption, a whole lot of stuff in walking as well. So I'm starting to get a sense of that Anna's, what she's indicating to me is that where she feels lacking or what she wants more of is a sense of connection through her spine around functions that have rotation. And what I'm adding into that is I reckon she needs to feel the power in her pelvis being transmitted through her spine. That's my overlay. It's not what she said, but that's my overlay about, I reckon there might be something about connecting with power, and also then about connecting with the ground for power as well, so that when she's doing this rotation stuff, I can actually see that it's coming from her feet, generating, pelvis. Yeah. And then because it's the power business, that transmission thing that makes you feel connected. Yeah. Well, yeah, because you got your foot. Yeah. The initiation. Yeah, you could. Yeah. Exactly. Yeah, and there's no power there. Yeah, exactly. Yeah, and vulnerable, or tired, or all this, or wishy-washy, or so that's kind of a working hypothesis about maybe, and I don't know for sure, that could all be bollocks, and when I start working with her, she could be as powerful as all hell and accessing her pelvis and blah blah blah, and she is. It's not like she's not. This is about graded distinctions. So compared to, again, Joe Blow, take all this as a grain of salt. And again, you can see why I don't want to communicate all this to her, because it's taking her down a rabbit hole of, is there something wrong with me? And it's not what I mean at all. Yeah. And I want her to feel it first and not know it. Because, I mean, some people do process sensing first, but mostly not. And they'll go into their heads and do all sorts of mind-fucking stuff. That's recorded. So I don't want her to do that and start thinking, overthinking it. I just want her to now, I want her to drop into a sensing mode. So that's why I'm not going to do much more. But I will just stand up and just face that way. Just to start getting some information about this, what's happening in the tone in her spine and what does she think about it. Now, I know Anna from classes, she's a jiggler. You're a jiggler. She's constantly knowing where she is in space, like jiggling. So I need to just factor that into you're a jiggler. Like try and be still. I dare you. She doesn't like it. Whereas for me, it's the easiest thing in the world. She's a jiggler. Yeah. Yeah. All right. So I could choose any position. Any position will help her find the power of her pelvis to generate a rotation force up through her spine. So let's go side lie. What position do you sleep in?
Side lie.
So whichever side you like, I don't mind. And this is where, you know, it's not I don't care, deal break. It's not a deal breaker. You know, I didn't particularly, I mean, I think she is right-handed, and she's got more tone on her right side, but I don't mind, you know. Yeah, so she's got more tone down the right side of her back than the left. So when I'm asking, you know, seeing spontaneously how she really likes to go into a lot of flexion at the knees, which is fine. And I think looking from a position point of view, we're going straight, and then probably need a little bit more padding or something soft, like a little towel under your head. Yeah. You can put that on. Comfort and sleeping. Yeah. Oh, you want to be okay. Yeah, I can do that too. Because it's gonna be the same thing, you know. Okay. So how's that feeling on your head? A little bit more? Would you like a little bit more on your head? Another little towel, a bit softer. Yeah, I think that's what I'm seeing is just a little bit hard. Try that. Half. Now, I could put something between her knees, but because I'm going to be quiet, I'm going to be moving her a bit. I'm actually not going to for now. And sometimes we really want to do that is when people really aren't on their side. So then if you put something between their knees, it gets them more on their side. But Anna's really on her side. Like she's right on her greater trochanter. She's on her shoulder. This shoulder slightly rotated back, but that's not a problem. But I don't need to bring her knee up so that her thighs are more parallel because she hasn't got really big wide hips and little narrow knees. If that makes sense. So I'm quite happy with that, about being a bit tidy. And now I'm going to start asking a few questions about this idea of rotation. So what I'm thinking is what does she, like I know what her active nervous system thinks about rotation, and that's her habit. What does her structure think about rotation? Like where is rotation possible or not? Now, if this was the first time I'd met Anna, I would ask her questions about her history, like, is there anything I need to know about surgeries or any other injuries? I know that she's got some degeneration in her spine, and it's like she's, you know, in her 40s. Of course she will. Okay. Yep. Yeah. And yeah, it's all, yeah. And the thing with degenerative joint stuff is everybody's got it and most people are not symptomatic with it. So there's a pretty poor relationship between degeneration and actual pain. So you just don't get fussed about it. You know, don't get frightened by it. The people who've got it, it's not a nice self-image. You know, I've got a degenerative condition. That's not a nice self-image. But from our point of view, it's neither here nor there. You know, we're all degenerating, and it's not particularly relevant. Yeah. 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 Okay. Yeah. And that's yes. Yeah. And a friend of mine who's a physio actually had felt the same things. Like, okay, I can work with that now. Like, I know what that is, and I know that it means that I'm more easily flared up. But it also means I've got something to manage, and I know what to do about it, which is to keep moving and keep strong, and keep keep nourished, keep my nutrition up, etc. So yeah, I bottom cross was always don't diagnose. We don't diagnose. Diagnosis is bad, full stop. Actually, I agree with you, and it's not always a bad thing. Depends what people's response to it is. And Anna's response is that she's empowered. So that's great. That's the important thing. All right, so I'm going to go back to asking questions. So the first thing I did was fairly undifferentiated, like move the heaviest bit of her to see what sense of connection there was and where else the movement happens and how much, like how willing, how ready it is to move, given that it's not where she initiates rotation from. So maybe I'm being a bit confronting. But it does move, and it moves relatively easily, and but it transmits, not but, and it transmits pretty much straight away into the whole of her. Okay, that's what I'm noticing, and it's neither here nor there. And I'm just going to do something different, which is hold her pelvis still and rotate her from here. This is a very different question. I'm pinching her arm a little bit. Thank you. So this hand is holding the pelvis still, but I can feel when, so if I rotate her back, when this is starting to want to come. Because this is what I noticed is that she can initiate here, is what you're talking about, initiating here, and then the pelvis can come. So there's that differentiation. If the rotation starts here, it rotates, and then this starts to rotate. If I initiate the rotation here, everything rotates. There's a different kind of organization depending on what you saw. Yeah. And this is then where the questioning, the question starts sliding into the statement. And I think Zoran's talked to you about the sort of, I can't remember what the funny words are, when it's a question versus a performative thing, like a more of a statement, like notice this. So this is what happens when I do this? What happens when I do this? And then this bit is, okay, well, this is interesting. I want to show you something. When this happens, and then this can happen, what's the effect of that? That sort of, or notice I can hold her pelvis still and actually push her pelvis forward and take her back. That really she doesn't like that at all. Like that's not a goer. Okay. If I take both back at the same time, it works, but actually it's easier to take her pelvis back by itself than to take both back. So there's some interesting relationships between rotating this end and rotating that end that aren't reciprocal. And that's interesting. It's neither right nor wrong. It's just interesting. So now I'm going to try and confuse her by just doing a whole bunch of different permutations of, and the talking is not helpful for her at all, because it's making her think and overload and all that sort of stuff. So now to get underneath that habit, I can kind of confuse her a little bit. And this is like a bit of smoke and mirrors about all these different permutations. If you think about the permutation, I mean, obviously I can rotate more up here, which is going to get the shoulder blade rotating on the chest, which is what you did in the ATM. I can rotate her here. I can rotate her here, or more lower down, which makes her legs slide more. Think about the ATM. So I've got, let's say, 4 distinct handles for rotating that will feel somewhat different. And then each of those, let me say there's 3. There's possibilities for it to go forward, to go back, or stay in the middle. So now in my head, to really mess with her sense of rotation, I'm going to just explore some different permutations of some being still, some going forward, some going back, or going back, or going forward. Because there's 4, it gets very confusing. So that's kind of messes with her head a bit, messes with her organization, because she can't kind of track. Yeah, that's right, by messing it up. It's kind of like busting it, which you wouldn't do with somebody if you didn't know them well, and you wouldn't do it slowly. You wouldn't do it slowly. You wouldn't do it quickly. And maybe I won't do all 4. So this sort of stuff is very good for people who are really smart, because it's just too complicated for them to follow. And it's not complicated for me, because I'm just doing variations of my hands being still, or my hands moving forward, or my hands moving backwards. And it's as simple as that. And my criteria is just monitor her breathing. And you wouldn't do this for long. Okay, so then I'm going to leave her alone for a bit and see what the hell has happened. Slightly difficult with puffer jackets, just in terms of breathing, but I can still see her breathing. So this doesn't bother me. But just for you, like, you'll develop the X-ray vision about seeing through the clothes and seeing to the skeleton. It comes. So in a way, I'm also waiting for her to see if she's forgiven me for that onslaught. Because she'll breathe. So this is the monitoring. It's all the time monitoring. And I'll just see, you can watch their face as well, watch their eyes. So if they're really thinking a lot, their eyes will be darting around. Often people's eyes will be darting around a lot. Now she's a seasoned deaf eye person, so she's not, people really didn't like that. They'd stiffen and they'd be watching, they'd be going, and you wouldn't, yeah. So even if she was slightly agitated, it's now she's seeking for comfort, and that's fine. So I feel like maybe I've got away with it. And now I'm just going to go back to that original movement and seeing if there's any kind of change. Maybe a little bit. There's still a really strong sense of connection between the pelvis and the shoulder. And for some people, that might be what you want, is that when you rotate here, the shoulder moves. So it's all relative, isn't it? Okay, so now I'm going to I'm going to go with her pattern now, because I'm not convinced that had any, like, messing with her head didn't really have any big effect. Getting cold? Have you got sleeves on? It's just that I can't see it. Maybe just go and get some long sleeves if you don't mind. Oh yeah, you want to put Ruth's top on? Oh, right. There you go. Oh, I had it run the wrong way. It's quite nice. So now the other thing I'm going to do, so I know you shouldn't change two things, is just take her knees down a little bit, because she was so stable with her knees up really high that that's not helping me with the rotations. Is that better with the, okay. No, I didn't go in straight away and do that because she chose to have her knees up high, and it feels a bit corrective. If I thought it was a deal breaker, I would have moved them. I'd asked her if it was, and I would have moved them. So now I'm going to go with her pattern, because I think that's what she would rather me do, because the busting up business didn't work. So I'm going to, so this is how she knows rotation, through a lot of arm movement and then a little bit into her chest. That's what we saw in the interview and in the walking. And I'm really now going very, very small, so that we're just starting to really explore how she does that. And interestingly, there isn't as much differentiation between the shoulder girdle and the ribs as I would have thought from somebody who described what she described. So actually she goes into rotating in her thoracic spine much faster than I thought she would. So there's now going to be a whole lot of work around very specifically clarifying. And I didn't see Anna particularly doing the ATM today, but that ATM would be really interesting for her, because it was about lying on her tummy. Yeah. So what I'm doing is now pretty much holding the ribs still and just using the arm as a lever to slide the scapula forwards and backwards in whatever path it wants. And it wants to actually go up more than back. That's partly my movement, but that's. So again, I'm working fairly fast and trying to keep so that she can't help me, basically. So every time I feel like she's got the, oh yeah, you're going my arm forward, then I stop and make it go backwards. So that eventually she'll give up and go to sleep, and then I can do what I want. She's not helping me heaps, by the way. Again, it's very, very relative. Pretty much the whole torso. Yeah, sometimes it's there. So it was there, and I was doing this jiggly thing. Then I let the torso come here, and I'm doing the jiggly thing, and then even more forward and doing the jiggly thing, which is not dissimilar to when you were rotating the head here, rotating it here, and then rotating it back there. It's just giving a slightly different orientations. So I feel like that's had some sort of success, but not a lot. Success, whatever. I actually don't think in terms of that. It's like, well, there's a sense of slightly more movement of the scapula relative to the ribs. But now I've gone right on the scapula, because I'm thinking maybe it's that she doesn't actually know exactly where the scapula is. And maybe I need to have some conversation with the individual muscles around the scapula. So that she actually knows that she's got a scapula. Now, I know she knows she's got a scapula, but at another level. and that she knows how that scapula can link up. Now, if you just let me know if this is too much at any time, won't you? You all right? Yeah, she does. She really does. She really, really, really does. So that's really helped me. She's less stable again, and now her shoulder blade, but not having it forward, is very, very different. You see it like it's just scooting around her chest. Super, super, super different. So there's a difference in what she knows about her scapula with her arm here versus here. But maybe if I come back here now, it's still there. So, this is about playing around with different positions and finding out when does she know that and when does she not know it. And if you show her where she knows it and then take it back to where she doesn't know it, maybe she knows it. Okay, so that feels different to me. I can ask her what she thinks about that, or I can just let her vegetate. So give her a rest. I need a rest. I'm getting too busy, so I need a rest because I get too intense. And so that probably means that she needed a rest about 2 minutes ago. Oh my word, I'm having a moment. See, I'll just sweat on you if that's all right. I'll take all my clothes off and put you on. I mean, I can give you a blanket. It's just that then it will kind of ruin it for it is your lesson though. Bottom. So I'm just going to spend a bit of time watching her breathing and so forth. So interestingly, probably where I'm sensing the most work with Anna is between the humerus and the shoulder blade. So that's why when I brought it up here and actually took the arm out of the picture, yeah. Because then when I feel this, I see now because she's listening to me, there's probably everything else, moves a bit like butter, but probably relatively that is not. Now, I could say, oh no, she's resisting, she doesn't want to come back. But that's partly because she feels like her head's going to fall off the thing, maybe? Just lift your head up a bit. There we go. Sore head. Okay. Yeah. So then, so I'm thinking then, if we've got this kinematic chain of the shoulder girdle coming back and then the ribs, one after the other, rotating back, rotating back, rotating back, rotating back, rotating back. We can think about individual ribs, which have to lengthen in between each rib. So I could differentiate each rib, but she's already given me the clue that she's feeling it here. So I'm going to sort of pretend that the ribs are one kind of basket, which they are, but what's holding them? Tummy. Yeah. And I know, Anna uses her tummy a lot because she's got a fairly flat tummy. You might not think she might not think she's got a flat tummy, but she has got a fairly flat tummy, which tells me that there's a fair bit of tonus in it. So I'm thinking I would like to explore a little bit of that. You don't, yeah, no, I'm not going to do that. So I'm going to actually take over the work. If she's feeling some tightness there, I'm going to go, oh, really sorry, I don't want you to feel tight. Here, let me do the tightness for you. Let me do that tightness for you. Yeah, you're quite right. You don't want to fall apart. Let me do the tightness for you. So can you see how they're making the wrinkles in her clothes? So she said she feels tight when I'm pulling her back that way. So I'm doing exactly opposite. I'm pushing her back to where I'm presuming she wanted to be, because when she said she felt tight going back, then I'm going, oh yeah, okay, you are, yeah, okay, no worries. I'll do the opposite. So this is going with her. Yep. 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 I'm doing. Yeah. Yeah. So I interpret her sore as not letting go. Like, now you'll feel in you when someone says it's getting sore, you'll go, freak out, freak out, freak out. Well, just don't. It's just sore is just whatever it is. It's just a sensation. When her response to sore is important, but don't let your response to sore be the inhibiting factor. So what am I monitoring is that as I'm taking over the work, she's breathing far more in that area now because the muscles can let go. Huge, huge, huge. Because I've said, oh yeah, I see what you mean. Yeah. You want to keep that short there? Yeah. Okay, let's keep that short there and I'll do it for you. I'll keep it short there. And then the muscles go, oh, thank God I can go out and have a fag. And they've gone out to have a fag. And so she's not holding anymore. Now, then what I can do in a very sneaky way, and this might not work because now she knows I'm doing it, is that then I stop doing the work. While they're out having a fag, I stop doing their work for them. And then her system realizes, oh, I'm not going to fall apart. Maybe I can stay out there and have a fag forever. She doesn't need to do any work. It's an unnecessary. Parasitic. Did you know parasitic has almost the same letters as Pilates? Sorry. Beautifully taught Pilates is beautiful. But this idea of, so let me just test this now about, this might be too confronting, but I can go back with the pattern. And this is a hugely exaggerated pattern because this is not what Anna does, but I'm exaggerating from what she told me to how does that feel? And then I don't have to necessarily ask her because I don't necessarily want her to focus on it. But to reassure her, I can keep going right back into the pattern, just to reassure her, saying, look, I don't want you don't have to change, Dale. It's fine. It's fine. If this is what you like, it's fine. You can always come back. You can go away and you can come back. So it's not, people resist change. And then I'm letting her do it from here as well, because that's actually what she showed me that she does a bit. And then I can just keep that still and come back to here. No, she doesn't want to do it. She doesn't want that particularly. That's fine. Yep. But this is where I might, can someone give me that big, see, when I'm in my rooms, I have to do all this work myself. But when you're here, I can have the luxury of assistance. Is that okay? It's all right. Don't like it? Is that better? So in case she doesn't like this feeling of being exposed and falling backwards, I've put that there. I could use my knee. And now I'm going to just work a little bit on individual ribs about going into the pattern. Going into the pattern. So remember I said the whole rib cage can be held over there by the sheaths of tummy muscles. each individual rib can be anchored to each by the little tiny intercostals. That's it. This is where I usually say something about, you know, if you're eating spare ribs, it's that little bit of meat in between the ribs, which I don't eat, but apparently it's very yummy. So I'm working on the spare rib, on those ribs. That I'm marinating them. So I've got a couple in this hand that I'm pushing down collectively onto the ones below. Now, with a bloke, it's a bit easier because there's no breast tissue, and Anna's not hasn't got heaps of breast tissue everywhere, so I can actually do this easier than if someone's got a lot of breast tissue around. You can't. It's very hard to work in here, but you can feel the difference between breast tissue and muscle. And every now and again, you're going to go, oops, oh, sorry, oops. It's harder for you guys in this area. And what I'm also thinking of, not just those little intercostals, but the pec muscle here, which, I was feeling that there's a really she's strongly connected between her humerus and her shoulder blade. And the pecs are really good at that. So that's shortening the pec and taking over the work. Did you see how interested she was in that? Like this inflated under the pec, and it just kept inflating. She's doing it again because she's listening. She just did it. I mean, the first time she did it spontaneously, probably the second time she did it spontaneously too. But that's when you know that somebody's interested, their nervous system is interested, because this upper lobe of her lung really inflated, and there's a lot of movement here. And the muscles let go so that it can move in there. Yeah. So I always say the breath is like, the internal masseur, but it's a really good indicator that if you've got all these muscles holding your ribs down and together, the breath can't get in there. The muscles let go, then the breath will go there, and it will just go there, and it'll go like whee, and because these muscles let go, then it can inflate in there. Yeah. So it's a beautiful collision of things, opposite of collision. Yep. Yep. And I didn't know when I watched her rotating what her pattern was. It was only when I started feeling, and actually what she tells me, because she knows a lot about her pattern, I suspect, that I'm constantly refining what I think her pattern is. And it's not a fixed pattern. It's more of a tendency. It's not like she has to do it. She could come out of it. Yeah. 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 But it wasn't a rotation where I'm working now. Yeah. Yeah. Up to a point. Yeah. But yeah, it's not, what we're seeing here is not exactly the same as what we saw in sitting. You're right. It is contextual. So now I'm just going to go back. I'm just going to let the roller roll back a little bit. She doesn't necessarily know that. She does now because I've told her. But then I've gone back, and then I've let the roller go away a bit. So actually she's come further back, which means that she's let go here. Now I could come back to the overall thing, and I can bring the 2 points together, which is quite a weird thing, but I'm actually bringing her other opposite diagonal of the abdomen. So that hand and this hand are coming together. So again, it's really taking over the work from both ends now. And I'm feeling what she's doing with her breath that tells me if her system has really let me take over the work or not. So I'm feeling her belly breathing more and more fully under this, my left hand. So I'm kind of exaggerating that. How are you going? Okay. So interestingly, this is changing. So when I first push forward, you can see that there is, an immediate kind of response above, but then there is starting to be a sense of different timing between them. And when I come back, there's a different sense of timing. And I can change the trajectory a little bit. So that's kind of coming down that way, which is opening her out more than just rotating. That's folding her in more, which I can do because I've got her hips not quite so bent. And then when I do the differentiation thing, I don't have to work so hard. I'm being a bit jiggly for her, but it's a bit fast. But so now I'm just doing the rotation more that way than that way, just to make sure that what I'm is it consistent, this pattern. So when I come back to do that funny business that I was doing before, there's a lot more. Now that in itself is neither good nor bad. I mean, this is how, this is, if someone's really differentiated, it's not a nice place to be either. So there's no judgment here about, yes, success, she's more jiggly. It's like, well, that's a possibility that her nervous system knows all of that stuff. But again, I'm doing too much. I'm getting excited. Time to give her a rest. Yep.
What is it you say to yourself that tells you?
For me, it's it's when my ego is in there.
Which is?
It's like, oh, this is about me now.
Okay.
Like, oh, I'm really interested. It's not about her anymore. It's about me. And this is where you have to know yourself. You have to recognize your ego when it pops up.
So your question would be, what does she?
Yeah.
Need,
Yeah.
feel?
Yeah.
Sense?
Yeah.
But
yeah.
I wonder if.
Well, I wonder if could still be her. It's like, oh yes, I'm really interested, and it's all about me. It's the eyes popping. My eye pops up in. So then I go, oh, back in your little box. It's not about you, Susan.
Whichever is our habit, 'cause we've all got
That's
different
right.
habits.
Yeah. So that's for me how that manifests. Other people that get too focused on the person. I mean, the person's ego takes over or something. It could be, but the thing is, if you don't know yourself, you don't know what's her and what's me. And I could be wrong. She could love it. She could love being the subject of my curiosity. But chances are she'll start feeling like I'm pushing her around and she's a piece of meat. What do you think, Anna? Yeah. Yeah.
So what happens?
Marinated.
I mean, I can, the slower the better for me. Not all the time, but
Yeah. Yeah. And this is a paradox in Anna, that she's a jiggler, like she's constantly moving all the time, but that's her movement. So just because she likes to do it all the time doesn't mean that she's a kinesthetic junkie about wanting to be moved all the time.
She's got control of it, then
Yeah.
So you said that it could be the person's ego taking over.
Yeah.
So can you give me an example?
I can't, I haven't felt Anna will let you know. This sounds pejorative. When Anna lets you know how she's feeling, it's not necessarily a bad thing. It's not necessarily an ego thing. But it sometimes will manifest as a need to control, and that's perfectly fine.
Like the person saying, oh, that feels good or that doesn't feel good. Commenting or
Yeah. I'd have to think about. Yeah. That's what I'm saying. I don't want you to get the impression that them talking and giving me feedback is an ego problem, because it's not at all. That's what I'm trying to be a bit more careful about the way I say. I can only comment on my ego, I think, is probably what I can't comment on that. You'll certainly know when a client is starting to take charge, because they'll start telling you what to do and they'll give you feedback on every bloody thing that you're doing. Like, oh, your hands there, do this, and you don't. Yeah.
that's
So,
what I meant.
yeah. And Anna's not doing that at all. She's just giving me feedback that's useful. And so that's not a problem. Yeah, that's right. Yeah. And often, funnily enough, it's often their anxiety that will do that. Enough's enough. Yeah. So I've got an itchy foot. You keep yourself stimulated by doing that. I don't know why you do it, really. I can only guess, but the jiggling is it's like who knows what you're doing. You might be giving yourself a little spritz of dopamine every time you do it. I don't know. Yeah. Yep. Yeah. Yep. And it would be ultimately interesting So I have no idea whether the jingling is a good thing or a bad thing or a neutral thing. It could be, I have no opinion either way. What is interesting, apropos what we're talking about this morning, is sometimes when you're not comfortable is what happens if you don't jiggle, and if you've ever tried it or not. Yeah. So I'm going to put her back where she's comfortable, because I just feel like she probably needs to be more where she's comfortable again. Enough of the perturbing already. Are you warm enough? And again, because Anna has a lot more awareness than the general public, she's been able to be really articulate with me about her relationship with her side and that rotation stuff. So enough's enough. Okay, so do you hear that? There's a very clear message. Enough's enough there. That's fine, because back off. Maybe, yeah, or just don't come, like, because I can influence that area just as easily from anywhere else as being right on it. Yeah. So sometimes that's my tendency sometimes, is because I can see stuff there and I think, well, it's a bit of a shortcut. But you can do yourself a disservice by being too literal. And it's a bit like you had that influence in your back or your pelvis from moving the foot that you might not have had if Helen had touched your back straight away, because there's so much shit there, excuse the French, but that coming under the radar sort of thing from the foot is so much more profound. Yeah. So, we have to keep reminding ourselves about that as not being literal. Stealth. Oh yeah, it's not the ground. Sorry. Okay. I'm just rotating her pelvis a little bit. Yeah. From the leg. And actually here I'm rotating her soft tissue around her shin bone and then taking up the slack into her hip joint, and then her hip joint's taking up the slack into her lumbar spine a bit. So there's actually so many degrees of separation between what I'm doing and the rotation in her. So it's even more indirect, and that's nice for her because it's completely coming away from where she's had enough. That was me falling off my own knee then. I think I've gone a bit over time. How are you going? Is that okay? Oh, where's that big roller gone? It's all right. No, that's okay. Not a problem. I've forgotten to talk. The talking wasn't helping Anna at all. So, as you could see, I was using her leg as a lever just to explore what rotations she liked. And then I just came back to check the connection of her arm into her chest and torso. And then the other piece of the puzzle that I really haven't been illuminating for her is the role of her neck in the rotation and how that connects and doesn't have to connect and can connect. So just like in the ATM, the head can go with the spine and the shoulder going back, or it doesn't have to. So there can be that little bit of that and that, or they can be a little bit differentiated. But the trick with neck movements is I need to see the tendency of a relationship, not a big movement in this instance. So I'm actually on the side of her neck and rotating her neck back a little bit, enough to feel it going into her chest, and then that's enough. Yep. So it's only tiny, but that's enough for her. She knows what I'm exploring at some level. And then we'll pause a bit. And I put the thing under her arm so that there wasn't such a strong pull down of her chest being sunk down into the table while I was moving her neck, so that her chest was more in alignment with her head without the weight of the arm dragging her forward, so that it wasn't such a big thing with her neck. Yeah, I can imagine, because there is a lot of work here so this arm wouldn't necessarily sit comfortably, but maybe, having a pillow in front might be a nice thing. Does it feel nice or not? It's a little bit high. Something squishier might be nice, but it's worth a try. So in the interest of time, just come back a little bit. So I've put Anna back into where she wants to be. I've taken the pressure off her arm. And what you can't feel, but I can feel, is that I'm getting more bang for my buck. So I'm not pushing her any further because she doesn't want to. It's not about range, but to take her here and here, my hands, myself is doing about a quarter of the work. But Anna is not interested in range. Like, there's a no-go zone that she's not interested in going further. And that's fine, because in Feldenkrais we're not, you know, range is neither here nor there. If it's functional, it's fine. If she can get rotation and it suits her, I'm just coming back to that little differentiation stuff, and the together stuff. Yeah. So that's enough. So Anna, how are you feeling? She's a bit shell-shocked. Just sit for a bit. Yeah. Now this is where, because she's only been on the one side, I need to see how that is. How do you feel? If you don't need to talk if you don't. The right side feels bigger. Yeah. Is bigger nicer or not so nicer? Yeah.
Different. It's bigger and more hollow.
Okay.
I mean, it's not.
Is that is it going to make you feel? Yeah. Yeah. So now my thinking is how much I'm trying to work out, is this the asymmetry that she's feeling, is that going to be okay or is it not going to be okay? And do I need to do something to help her equalize up a little bit? She's kind of hinting that she's used to feeling quite asymmetrical after a lesson anyway. So I'm still thinking about that. And that's, sorry. So I'm just doing a few little moves to see if I can feel it and if it's going to make a difference in terms of her weight bearing on each foot, each leg. You know, in terms of her being able to drive her car. So that's what this was about, you know, that both sides are functioning. There's a bit of a tendency that she collapsed when this side came forward, like bleh, as opposed to when this side came forward, she was more organized. So I'm in two minds about that. But ultimately I can kind of, how do you feel about going home? All right. How do you feel about what do you have to do this evening? Oh. Okay. Yep. So let's see how you are standing up. Oh my Lord. You're slightly more on your left leg, but you know, I didn't notice that before, but I think it might be. So it's not like I saw everything at the beginning of the lesson, just FYI. And it wasn't the kind of frame of reference I was looking at. I was thinking more about the planes of action. Oh, hell yeah. Yep. And it's not like she can't go on that leg. Okay. So then I'm going to watch her walking, and that will help me decide whether I feel comfortable and whether she feels comfortable being released into the wild.
Using her pelvis to help us more.
Yeah, there is. There is. Yeah, there is. I'm not, I'm kind of holding judgment about whether that's a good thing for her or not. It's there because it has a quality of that. And she's frowning, so she's not sure about. Oh yeah. Okay. Yeah. Yep. Yeah. It's yeah. So remember I said yesterday that if people think that you're working on the uppermost side, and sometimes it's the underneath side that's making all the changes. So don't be fooled by where your hands are, because it's like the magician, your hands are doing all the thing and the tricks happened over here. But I didn't, I can't predict that either. You can't predict it. No, until no. Possibly with her, possibly. Yeah. Yeah, because I think it would have defocused her a little bit off, because it was a bit relentless on her left side. Yeah. But to be honest, with real human beings who don't like turning over, I often don't. And I slip my hands under the other side and work on the other side. Sorry, she got cold and it was just here. Well, I think if you were generous, Ruth, you'd probably let her have it. So how are you feeling? Is there anything you want to say to the group or ask or? Yep. Yeah. Okay. Is that?
Usually I'm like, oh no, well actually, I don't know. This just feels usually like it's and that now.
Yep.
Exaggeration.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah. So we'll go with, obviously we go with her experience. We see what we see and we go with her experience as well. So what I would say to Anna to think about is, actually what I would ask you to do is now walk backwards. If you really want to see if someone can rotate, get them to walk backwards. And watch the cord. Because to walk backwards, you have to rotate more. And then she's not getting the collapsing business happening so much. And yeah. Because remember my original kind of thing about what would be really nice for Anna to feel is the power. So you'll get that walking backwards a little bit and then walking fast, because you don't need to be powerful walking. Do you want to walk fast? The power thing. The power in the pelvis for rotating. Yeah. So that's where I was really thinking, because if you really want to feel powerful, and I know what the lesson is that I would give Anna next, that would really address the power of the pelvis stuff. Yeah, I know what that lesson would be now, which is fine. And probably what I would say to her is that she can feel. See, now I've gone non-verbal because I'm too busy watching. She's cold. Is walking with a sense of pushing off. So when you're walking now, when you walk, have a sense of the leg behind you, leaving it. Yeah, it's not so much lifting your heel off early as leaving the leg behind you a little bit more. Yeah. 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 It's almost like you're skating. Yeah. So now by saying skiing, we've actually, yeah, we've put a different function in. Just leave your leg behind you and just push. That's it. Yeah. And then, yeah. See, yeah, it'll give her the power and she's not used to it because then she'll have to rotate. Yeah, then that will make you rotate. But she's still got this skating image in her mind now, so that's fine. Yeah, so that's enough. So that's one thing. One thing is to think about when you're walking about the foot being left behind, because what's that doing is getting her to rotate. And this will counter rotate. That's it. Sorry. Enough. Leaving the leg behind. That's it. And I'm being deliberately obtuse because it's something that I want you to be a bit curious about and feel. And everything is telling me that it was enough. It's enough.
Okay, everyone has to sleep all day.
Yeah, good. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
No worries.